My name is Indigo Ray Whitman. I'm 32. And I was taught to serve, to give, to be the good daughter who brings the dessert, pays the bill, and never asks for anything back. That training works, right up until they decide your worth is whatever you can hand over without crying. Here's what happened. Mom sat at the head of the table, wine glass held high, as if she'd just delivered a toast worthy of applause. "We all agree," she said brightly. "You should sell your house and give the money to your sister's baby fund. She needs it more." Cousins clapped. Dad gave that proud father nod, like I'd finally be useful for something. My sister buried her face in her hands and whispered, "This means so much." Tears cued on command. I didn't argue. I didn't tremble. I just blinked, smiled, and reached for my phone. The message I'd been saving waited there like a loaded truth. I opened it and read aloud, calm as a surgeon. Property sale finalized. $894,000 wired to new trust account in the name of Indigo Ray Whitman. Protected, irrevocable, cannot be accessed without written permission from owner silence. No fork scraping, no baby fund speeches, no fake sobs, just that thick, heavy quiet that rolls in when a thunderstorm pulls up to your door. I set my phone down. "Looks like we won't be voting on my life tonight," I said. You could feel the room tilt. My sister shot to her feet first, cheeks blotchy, voice wobbling. "Wait, what do you mean you sold the house?" Mom reached for her elbow, two actresses caught in the wrong scene. I took a slow sip of wine. "The house you all assumed you could vote on like it's a pizza order? That one, it was mine. Paid in full. Remember when you laughed because I bought a 2-bedroom fixer in a bad zip code instead of going in on Ezra's condo? Yeah. That house." Dad's face went stiff, like a man who just remembered an overdue bill. "You're being ridiculous," he muttered. "This is about family." I actually laughed. "You mean your version of family? The one where I pay, smile, and stay quiet?" My cousin Amelia leaned in, whispering, "You're making a scene." "Let me make it bigger," I said. I reached into my purse, pulled out a folded envelope, and slid it across the table. Mom opened it. Her eyes moved, stopped, moved again. The color drained from her face. Inside was a notarized document. I'd canceled my $60,000 commitment to the family investment fund, the pot I'd been pressured to join for years, the one that somehow always saved everyone else's future, never mine. Dad slapped the table with his napkin. "You can't do this." "I already did," I said. My phone started buzzing like fireworks. One message, then 2, then 7. Ezra, Amelia, my aunt, my uncle, even Grandma. What happened? Why is everyone freaking out? Word was out, and they didn't know the half of it. Not yet. They say silence can be louder than screams. That night, my silence sliced. Mom held the envelope like it might catch fire. "You're really cutting us off?" she whispered, wounded, as if she hadn't just tried to auction my life. "Let me rephrase," I said evenly. "I'm choosing me." For once, my sister wiped a final tear and flipped into performance mode. "But the baby fund," she insisted. "We already told everyone you were contributing." "Ezra made a down payment based on your share." I leaned back. "Then maybe Ezra should have used his promotion bonus instead of counting on my sacrifice." Her jaw locked. Dad's voice rose. "This is betrayal." "No," I said, standing. "Betrayal is publicly humiliating your daughter and trying to guilt her into liquidating her life's work." I let my gaze linger on each face, every smile that had just cheered my financial execution. "You don't get to call me selfish because I stopped bleeding for you." I picked up my bag and walked out, past the linen napkins and forced applause, through the double doors, into clean, cool air where my real life was waiting. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I unlocked my car, turned the key, and watched my phone light up again and again and again. You want to know the truth? I'd been preparing for this moment for years, every "just this once," every "you're the only one who can." Every time my generosity was treated like a bottomless well. I learned the map of this family the hard way. There are no exits unless you build one. So I did. I found a buyer quietly, someone who saw what I'd built in that bad zip code: equity, stability, independence. I set up a trust in my name with guardrails even my guilt couldn't cut through. I retained a lawyer who doesn't flinch. I promised myself, no more decisions made at a dinner table full of people who call your devotion duty and your boundaries attitude. I drove home to my apartment, my new home, temporarily small but blazingly mine. My keys clinked in the bowl by the door. The room smelled like fresh paint and lemon oil from the rescue furniture I'd sanded myself. I exhaled, and it felt like the first breath I'd taken all night. My phone still rattled. Ezra, we need to talk. Aunt Linda, this isn't like you. Are you okay? Grandma, I'm disappointed, sweetheart. Mom, call me now. I set the phone face down on the counter. I wasn't that version of sweetheart anymore. I made tea. I walked the rooms. I ran a hand along the stack of boxes labeled in clean black marker: kitchen, books, plants, documents, keep, a life, condensed and curated, every box a decision I made for me. As the kettle clicked off, I caught my reflection in the window, hair pulled back, eyes clear, posture straight. I didn't look reckless. I didn't look cruel. I looked like a woman who finally quit asking permission to breathe. People think boundaries are a wall. They're not. They're a door you learn to close gently and lock when you need to. I thought about that dinner table, the choreography of it, the clinking glasses, the smiling accomplices, the soft scripted lines. We all agree. As if fairness were a vote and my life a group project, as if I were a line item in their future planning, as if I owed them my home because I had the audacity to build one. They called me the black sheep for years, the one who didn't follow the script, but black sheep learn something the others don't: how to run the farm when everyone else is busy comparing fences. The night they demanded my house is the night I stopped grazing on their approval. I sat on the floor with my tea and let the quiet wrap around me. Not the brittle silence of that dining room. This quiet had room in it. Space. Promise. Tomorrow I'd set up the final paperwork with the trust officer. I'd schedule the locksmith for my storage unit. I'd call the contractor who'd agreed to refresh the little studio above my friend's bakery, the place I'd be leasing for a while, just to hear my own thoughts over the hum of warm ovens and early morning courage, and I'd answer no one until I was ready. Quick pause. If you're feeling that spark of courage right now, hit subscribe, like, and share. Somewhere, someone needs proof that they're not cruel for choosing themselves. Back at the dinner, they were probably rewriting the story already. They'd claim I'd snapped, while quietly Googling irrevocable trust, how to undo. They'd say I needed help, when what I needed was distance. They'd confuse access with love, contribution with character, obedience with respect. But you can't guilt trip a locked door. You can't vote away a deed in my name. And you can't call me selfish for finally reading the fine print on our family contract and declining to sign. That night was the beginning. By morning, they'd wish they'd never opened their mouths. Because once a black sheep learns how to run the farm, the wolves don't scare her, and neither does a dinner table full of smiles. I turned my phone over one last time. Another notification. The bank again. A routine alert this time. I smiled. Clarity, digitized. A life I chose line by line. Then I turned off the lights, pulled the blanket over my legs, and let sleep come. Tomorrow would be loud. But tonight was mine. Have you ever watched the people you fed collapse around you, then expect you to stitch them back together? If you've ever had to choose yourself over the comfort of belonging, hit subscribe, like, and share. This one's for you. My phone blew up like someone had set off fireworks in a quiet town. Missed calls, texts stacked on top of texts, voicemails I could hear like different voices in a hallway, pleading, outraged, bargaining. Suddenly, the woman who didn't belong at the table was the only one who could fix what they broke. I didn't answer. Not when my cousin sent a photo of Dad hunched over the phone with the bank. Not when Mom called 3 times in a row, her voice cracking with a panic she hadn't shown at dinner. They didn't know something buried in paperwork, quiet, legal, and deadly, and I decided to let the quiet do its work. Monday morning, the first thing in my inbox wasn't another family demand. It was the bank. "Hi, Miss Elwood. Just confirming you're listed as sole signatory and owner of the joint family holding account. As per your request, access for all secondary users has been revoked." I read it twice, the words settling in like winter. Calm is still water. Dangerous because it hides the current. That account, the one I'd kept afloat while others celebrated, the one built under my name as I worked 3 jobs to fix their credit, was now out of reach to everyone but me. They assumed I was the mule, the fool who'd shoulder debt and shame. They forgot I have an MBA. They forgot I was watching. It wasn't revenge so much as accounting. A year ago, I quietly consolidated the family trust into a single asset account to streamline taxes, a clean, sensible step. No one noticed I was the only name left on the paperwork. They never checked. They never read the fine print. They assumed I'd never touch it. With one signature that morning, I froze their cards, withdrew $82,000, paid off my mortgage, and donated the rest to a fund for single women entrepreneurs in my daughter's name. It felt good and terrible at the same time, like pressing a button that finally unlatched a long-locked cage, let them taste the silence they'd served me for years. By mid-afternoon, the family chat reanimated like a beast pulled from a shallow grave. "Mom, we need to talk." "Dad, you're playing with fire." "Sister, you ruined us." I didn't reply. I was busy making coffee and listening to the kettle sing, an ordinary song for a wildly unordinary morning. That evening, a car slowed outside my house. My sister stepped out, eyes swollen, hair a tangle, phone a lifeline clutched in both hands. She walked up the path and stopped at the door. I watched from the window as she raised a trembling hand, then lowered it. She sat on the stoop instead, shoulders collapsing like someone asking forgiveness from a stone. Silence can be a mirror. The reflection you see isn't flattering, and sometimes that's the point. The next morning she came again, but this time she knocked. "Let me explain," she whispered when I opened the door, voice fraying like a violin string about to snap. She told me the lines they now told themselves. Mom hadn't meant to humiliate me. Dad said I wouldn't care. They thought I was used to it by now. Used to it. Used to being the hand-me-down emotion in a house where everyone's needs get prioritized except mine. The words landed like small, familiar knives. I stayed quiet. Through the peephole, I watched her shrink. She sat on my front steps and waited. Then the second surprise. Mom in slippers, robe wrapped tight, hair wild from sleep, marching up my path like someone with a purpose she'd only just found. "You have no idea what you've done," she spat, voice sharp. "Your father's accounts are frozen." "The tax office is asking questions. Ezra can't book his honeymoon. Your uncle's in tears." She shoved a paper bag at me like it contained answers. "Let's talk like family." Inside, I opened the bag. It held a dusty photo album, pages curled and torn, memories pinned like moths, pigtails, spelling bees, trophies that stood on the shelf with no one cheering, birthday cakes half-eaten, graduation photos where my smile looked small and solitary. Mom's voice softened. "You were never forgotten." I closed the album and looked her straight in the eye. "Funny," I said, "because I was never remembered." My words weren't loud. They didn't have to be. I pointed to the sign on my door. No soliciting, no guilt trips, no manipulation. She read it, flinched, and the only fight left in her was the one for a story that had already changed. I didn't scream. I didn't slam. I let absence do the heavy lifting. Let them sit with the weight of it. Let them know what it feels like to be the empty chair at the table. By nightfall, my phone vibrated with a number I'd once loved, Ezra. He'd been the kid who called me invisible and told me to stay that way. Now his voice broke. "I just need to know why you did it," he said. There was hurt in the line, but also anger that had the cheap edge of entitlement. I sat at my kitchen counter, palm pressed flat to the cool surface, and thought about how entitlement masquerades as concern. Because you kept treating my life like a community project, I wanted to say. Because you thought my boundaries were options to be negotiated at dinner. But I didn't answer yet. Not him. Not Mom. Not the chorus of people trying to rewrite the consequences of their choices into excuses. Instead, I brewed tea and watered the plants on my windowsill, watching them catch the late light. The house smelled faintly of lemon oil and cardboard boxes. I looked at the stacks labeled in black marker, kitchen, books, plants, documents, keep. Each label was a quiet manifesto, a life packed by intention, not by obligation. They called me dramatic. They called me selfish. But choices have consequences. So do people. I thought of the bank notification sitting in my inbox like a small official victory. I thought about every graceful "you should" that had been lobbed at me like a grenade. I thought about all the times I'd said yes to make others comfortable and how that had made me small. The next day, when my sister returned with a paper and a pen, "Sign this and we can make things right," I placed a mug in front of her and set the pen down untouched. I told her I'd listen when she had something real to say, not when she had a script to follow. You learn something when you stop answering every bell. You learn the difference between urgency and noise, and when the noise is just their discomfort with your freedom. I felt the house breathe with me. Not the family home, the one I'd sold, but this little place that held my boxes and my plans and the sound of the kettle. That night, alone with my tea and the generous quiet, I finally picked up the phone. I typed a message to my lawyer. Confirm all transfers completed. Document donation details. Prepare press statement if needed. Then I hit send. Not fury, not glee. Just orderly steps toward a life I'd decided to protect. If they wanted drama, they'd made one. If they wanted repair, they could start by owning what they'd done. Until then, the silence would be my safest, loudest answer. If this part moved you, and if you're learning to choose yourself, please subscribe, like, and share. Someone out there needs the courage to close their own door. I was standing in my small dining room, the one I turned into a planning war room, when the phone buzzed again. Ezra. He wanted to know why. On the wall behind me hung my restaurant blueprint, the same one they'd ignored, mocked, and dismissed as a cute phase. I could still hear them. Be practical. Don't get ahead of yourself. Help the family first. Why did you do it? He asked, voice tight. You mean why I revoked your co-signing privileges? I said. Why your luxury condo payment bounced? I didn't bother to sweeten it. He hesitated, searching for the script that always worked on me. Just tell me what you want. For years, what I wanted was a seat at their table. A real one. A sincere question. An ounce of belief. Not a performance. Not a vote. Just presence. But I didn't want apologies anymore. I wanted recalibration. Here's what I want, Ezra, I said slowly. I want a world where you earn what you post, where Mom's toasts aren't theft in disguise, where Dad doesn't cash in my name, and where you, my perfect brother, learn what it feels like to build without expecting me to fund it. Silence. And then I heard something shift, not in my house, in his. A crack inside the golden image he'd wrapped around himself like a robe stitched with entitlement. The sound of something breaking, finally, where it belonged. That week, I got quiet, but not inactive. I pulled receipts, transferred my shares, closed every joint account, emailed my lawyer, the one they didn't know I'd retained for years, and then I did one last thing. I posted a single sentence. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's a spreadsheet calculating your worth. The next morning, my phone lit up with a tag I didn't expect. Mom's performative winner persona quietly deactivated, and the restaurant I built, a waitlist 3 months long. 2 weeks later, the doorbell rang. Not a frantic knock. A chime. Soft, deliberate, rehearsed. I opened the door and there they were. Dad in a pressed polo with nervous eyes. Mom in pearls, gripping a Tupperware container like a peace treaty. Ezra trailing behind, jaw clenched. A man used to applause now standing in front of silence. No balloons, no "we're sorry" sign. Just them, and the stench of desperation dressed up as dinner. "We've been talking," Dad started, voice brittle. "We want to help with the restaurant now. Marketing, maybe signage. It's doing well, right?" Mom rushed in. "We brought dinner," she said, thrusting the container forward. "Your favorite lasagna." "My favorite?" I asked, flat. "The one you made for Ezra's birthdays?" She blinked. "You remember that?" I smiled and stepped aside just enough to let the light hit the threshold, not enough to invite them in. "I remember everything." Ezra tried humor, the cheap, familiar kind. "Come on, Jules. Family squabbles, money stuff. It's messy. Let's just reset. Like I was the circuit breaker they'd tripped too many times. I looked at them carefully, the same three who'd once called me a phase, a burden, a career girl with no direction. Now they stood at the edge of what I built, hoping to tap into the electricity. "I don't hate you," I said quietly, "but I also don't owe you access to what you never believed in." Dad stepped forward, eyes glassy. "We're not here for money." "I know," I said, and I gently closed the door. On the other side, something small thudded, the lasagna landing on the porch. A silence, too full to be hunger. I exhaled, turned, and walked back to my dining room. The table was set for one, candle lit, a note in my handwriting that read, "Sometimes family isn't who knocks, it's who never made you wait at the door." 2 weeks after I closed that door, a letter arrived, not a text, not a call. A letter, handwritten, crooked ink, torn edges, from Ezra. "I underestimated you. We all did. That night at your restaurant was the first time I really saw you, not as my little sister, but as the storm we pretended didn't exist. I'm sorry. If you ever need anything, I'll show up." I folded the page and slid it into the drawer with the napkin from opening night, still stained with marinara and resolve. I didn't respond. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. The week after that, a journalist featured my restaurant in Hidden Gems of the City, woman-owned, soul-fueled. The article spread like fire in dry grass. Reservations tripled, locals left flowers and notes on the host stand. One woman lingered after dessert and whispered, "Thank you for making a place that feels like home for people who never had one." I smiled because that was always the point. To take every dinner I wasn't invited to and build my own table, my own rules, my own love. That night, after the last check closed and the chairs were up, I stepped onto the quiet street. The wind shifted, carrying a faint thread of lemon zest, like Mom's old kitchen on good days. For a moment, I waited for the ache. It didn't come. The scent passed through me like distant weather. I kept walking. Alone didn't feel like less anymore. It felt like earned peace. Not a performance, not a victory lap. Just peace. Back home, I stood in the doorway a beat longer than usual, listening to the soft tick of the cooling oven in my tiny kitchen, the comfortable hush of a place that holds no traps. I looked up at the night, the sky freckled with stars that never needed permission to shine, and I felt something unlock, a gentle hinge inside me swinging fully open. I whispered, to no one and to everything, I was always enough. And that's the truth I wish I'd learned earlier. Sometimes the most powerful "I love you" you can offer your family is spoken to yourself first. It sounds like boundaries. It looks like paperwork done right. It feels like a door that closes softly and a new one that opens onto your own life. If this story gave you the push to protect your peace, hit subscribe, like, and share. Somewhere, someone is deciding whether to be chosen or to choose themselves. Your voice might be the sign they need. Tomorrow the restaurant will hum again. The wait list will grow. My staff, many of them once overlooked, will laugh on the line and plate something beautiful. Guests will lean closer over candlelight and tell the truth more easily than they did at their own family tables. And I'll tie my apron, check the tickets, and keep building the life that once felt out of reach. They'll say I burned bridges. Maybe, but I built roads they never thought to travel, solid, bright, and mine. And when the wind shifts again, I'll let it pass through. I have nothing to prove and everything to savor. Forward. Always forward.